Hello and welcome. I'm Riz Khan. Well over 600 million people live in landlocked countries with only land borders and no direct access to ocean trade routes. For many landlocked countries, their location makes them particularly vulnerable to border conflicts, climate change, trade tariffs, such as those recently imposed by US President Donald Trump, and anything that affects the global supply chain. That's why the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has joined leaders of almost 40 nations here in Turkmenistan to address the challenges faced by landlocked developing countries. The event, the UN's third conference on the issue, and known as the LLDC3, focuses on creating a 10-year plan mapping out a path to prosperity for those hampered by their geographic position in the world.
I believe this conference can be an historic landmark. The problems of landlocked developing countries have until now been largely ignored in the global debate. Let's put it in the center of the map of our concerns of reform of the international economic and financial architecture. Thank you very much.
The four-day LLDC3 conference drew almost 6,000 participants from 103 countries as far afield as Australia and Canada. It was attended by 16 heads of state or government, 3 vice presidents, more than 100 ministers, a similar number of members of parliament, and nearly 500 NGOs. The European Union, China, India, Russia, and Saudi Arabia were among those sending delegations to Turkmenistan's coastal resort of Awaza. At a time when conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza are high on the agenda of the UN Secretary General, the presence of Antonio Guterres in Turkmenistan clearly indicated his commitment to the plight of landlocked developing countries.
We gather today to reaffirm a fundamental truth. Geography should never define destiny. Yet, for the 32 landlocked developing countries across Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America, geography too often limits development opportunities and entrenches inequality.
But the Secretary General had an optimistic message. He talked about converting geographical barriers into bridges.
But this conference is not about obstacles. It is about solutions. It is about launching a new decade of ambition through the Awaza Programme of Action and its deliverables, and fully unlocking the development potential of landlocked developing countries. The United Nations is proud to stand with you in this effort.
As the president of the host nation, Turkmenistan, President Serdar Berdimuhamedov was the first of many national leaders to address the UN's LLDC3 conference. He proposed a global medicine of the future, calling for international scientific collaboration in health and medical innovation, and spoke of his conviction that the position of landlocked countries could be improved.
Here in Turkmenistan, we are discussing the problems of landlocked developing countries and ways to solve them. We are doing so from a position of constructiveness and equality, mutual respect and consideration of interests, with care for our peoples, for their present and future. I am convinced we are on the right path and will achieve success together.
Following the first plenary session, I moderated the event's opening press conference attended by Secretary General Guterres, Turkmenistan's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs Rashid Meredov, together with the UN Under-Secretary Rabab Fatima, who serves as the Secretary General of the LLDC3 conference. I know each has a brief statement to make, and then we will have a chance for a couple of questions. But sir, I hand over to you, Mr. Guterres.
This conference reflects a new era of cooperation taking shape across Central Asia, one grounded in mutual trust, shared priorities, and growing regional solidarity. At a time when multilateral cooperation is being tested, this spirit of partnership is more essential than ever. Today's discussions show that landlocked developing countries don't want charity. They want justice. They want equitable access, investment, a fair chance to build resilient economies and inclusive societies. The Awaza program of action is a blueprint for doing so over the next decade, starting now. When landlocked developing countries thrive, entire regions benefit. The United Nations is committed to working with every country to turn the Awaza program of action into real results, jobs created, goods exported, emissions reduced, lives transformed. And we count on all Member States to support this effort and ensure that no country is left behind simply because of its geography. This is not only a matter of development, it's a matter of dignity and justice. Thank you.
Of course, those of you coming to Turkmenistan for the first time will have experienced the wonderful hospitality of the Turkmen people. I've had the honor of meeting Minister Meredov before, so I hand over to you, please, for your comments.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is highly symbolic of the fact that LLDC 3 is being held in 2025, a year that marks two important milestones: the 80th anniversary of the United Nations and the 30th anniversary since the international recognition of Turkmenistan's status of permanent neutrality. We believe these values, neutrality, peace, and mutual respect, are especially relevant as we explore collective solutions to global development challenges. We're only at the beginning of this important journey in Awaza, but the foundation has been laid for a successful and impactful conference. We thank all participants for their engagement, the United Nations for its partnership, and especially to the Secretary General for standing with us. Let us continue this work with purpose, solidarity, and vision. Thank you for your attention.
Under-Secretary Fatima is the UN's High Representative for landlocked countries, as well as its least developed countries and small island developing states. She joined me to discuss the most pressing problems that the conference would address. I guess one of the questions as a journalist for me is, this is quite a new topic on the public agenda, the idea of landlocked countries. But it's not entirely new, is it?
It's not entirely new, actually, but you're absolutely right. There's not much awareness about this group. While the LDCs, say the least developed countries or the small island developing countries, these are much better known. They're much, stronger on the international front. But the landlocked developing countries per se has not been there in that with similar sort of visibility. But this group has been officially around for more than 20 years now. This is the third conference that we are having, and they actually have conferences once in a decade. So the first one was also held in this region in Almaty, and then the second one was held in Vienna, and this is the third one. So it's over 20 years that officially in the UN, there is a group of landlocked developing countries, 32 of them.
This might sound brutal, but why should the world care about landlocked developing countries?
Because landlocked developing, as the Secretary General was mentioning, they are landlocked on the one hand, and then they're also developing. So all the challenges that the developing countries are facing, they have that. And that, I think, their landlocked status, being landlocked, also perhaps adds to their development challenges.
Meaning they don't have any open area for their own borders.
They don't have any access to the sea. So they have to actually rely on the transit coastal countries to have access to the sea. As we have been talking about throughout the week, trade costs are higher, almost double the cost as that of the transit neighbors. So I think that pushes up the cost for everything, whether they're exporting goods or importing goods. So costs are higher. And then transportation time is also higher. And because they have to come through different borders, takes time to unload, to get them cleared, and then very cumbersome customs processes, border regulations, etc. So everything becomes much more difficult.
And potentially vulnerable to disputes.
potentially they can be, I don't want to use the word, but they can perhaps sometimes be at the mercy of countries, the coastal states. So I think all this came to the fore during the pandemic, when borders were closed, not only coast, but borders were closed, right? And that was the time when the LLDCs really felt the brunt in a major way. And of course, when there are conflicts, pandemics, this problem becomes more. But just to also emphasize on the point, they have unique climate challenges. They contribute, the LLDCs contribute possibly the least to greenhouse, to climate change, but they are certainly suffering the severe impacts of the climate crisis.
And potentially, of course, restricted water supplies and all kinds of other issues.
Glacier melting, dry lands. I think they have a higher proportion of dry lands than others, dust storms. These are some particular unique climate challenges that the LLDCs face. So it was in that context that they actually, for the first time in an LLDC document, we have climate action as a priority area. So one of the other things that came out, and I'm very happy to announce we'll be going into to talk to the press about that right after this, is that they decided that they want to be also a negotiating group in the UNFCCC and the COP process, because they do not have a unified collective voice in the global climate discourse. Their issues do not come up in a bigger way, whether it is in climate action or climate finances. They do not have a collective voice on that. So they have gone through the process successfully. So the LLDCs will be going to the upcoming COP in Brazil, the COP 30, as a full-blown negotiating group.
A final brief thought. We're in Turkmenistan, a country that has been fairly quiet on the global map. What's been your impression of how things have worked out here? The world has basically come to Awaza.
Yeah. I was asked that question in New York before coming, and the ambassador of Turkmenistan was with me, and there was a question, I said, why not in Turkmenistan? Because I believe Turkmenistan maybe have been quiet, but I think they have very quietly been doing a lot of work, especially in terms of regional connectivity and regional cooperation in the region. So I think that was one. Secondly, they also expressed an interest, and coming here, I can see the total commitment of the government to making this process work. And they have been able to mobilize enough support for the LLDCs, not only amongst the LLDCs themselves, but again, the partner and other countries, to actually bring them here together. So if you're looking around the rooms, the different meetings that are taking place, there's a lot of buzz, there's a lot of momentum that we can see. And I would like to give the credit, I would like to actually congratulate the government of Turkmenistan for having been able to galvanize global opinion and global support for the LLDCs and bring them all here together, along with their partner countries and transit countries. So I'm quite excited about the days ahead.
Madam Secretary General, thank you so much for giving us the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The Economic Cooperation Organization is a regional trade body whose members represent almost 500 million people. Member states include Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and, as its Secretary General, Ambassador Dr. Asad Khan told me, 7 landlocked nations. One of the things you have is responsibility for an area that has a lot of landlocked countries. Yes. So, of course, this conference is of extreme relevance. What did you get so far out of the conference in terms of the progress being made?
I think the most important thing, and you are absolutely right, of the 10 members that we have, 7 are landlocked countries. And I must also say that we are proud that of the 3 LLDC conferences held so far, 2 are held in countries that are our members. The first in Kazakhstan, and now second here in Turkmenistan. And what this conference has done actually is to bring visibility to an issue, I think, that has been there for decades, I would say. But this time around, I think particularly when we are seeing also a growing desire to build stronger connections within the region, I think this conference has assumed even greater importance. So all the issues that affect the development trajectory of landlocked developing countries is something that has been brought to the front during this conference.
Is the need to build stronger relationships in the region a result of the fact that many countries, especially in the West now, America being, of course, the USA being a big one, are becoming very introspective and becoming quite protectionist in their nature?
I think the unpredictability and uncertainties and everyone adhering to the agreed norms and principles is something that brought a certain readiness to engage in multilateral work. Now, with the uncertainties that we are seeing, obviously countries would like to work more closely within the regions, within their neighbors, trying to find solutions that are local. But I'm not saying that this is essentially a kind of a mutually exclusive thing. We as much need multilateralism today as we needed it before. But a strong multilateralism is also a product of cooperative regionalism. And when countries are able to work with their neighbors, because all issues and conflicts are essentially regional, and their ability to resolve issues. And I must say that landlockedness is actually a factor of geography. And therefore, it is absolutely critical and essential that the solutions have to be found locally and regionally. And that's where I see some more hope now than before, that countries are now more keen to work regionally. But that doesn't necessarily mean, because the challenges that we are facing in the regions obviously are challenges that are not just transboundary challenges, but they involve the whole world. For instance, climate change. And this is an area and a part of the world where you practically see every single manifestation of the climate change vulnerabilities that a country or a region can face. Starting from land degradation, desertification, glacial melt, water stress, droughts, and you name it. So that's where obviously we need support from international community. And this conference, I would say, did very well in sensitizing the financing related needs because infrastructure is capital intensive. You need a lot of money actually to build roads. And you can't do it because particularly in countries and regions where they face underdevelopedness, where they face serious financial issues.
One thing that I've heard at the LLDC in terms of how future prosperity and security can be encouraged and adopted is the need for economies to diversify as well. And of course, tourism, for example, is a big factor. The member states you have amazing tourist potential, but they've largely been coming from, many of them, from the Soviet era, quite closed off. Do you see an opening up? Do you see a potential growing for the tourism to be boosted?
Yes, I think this is a region which is connected. And I usually say that we are a region that was, I think, more integrated and more connected 1,000 years ago than it is today. Because you could see on the Silk Route, these caravansarais. As a Pakistani, I went to Azerbaijan and I saw the Multan Sarai, And they said that it was actually established by people from Multan and who used to travel right up to Azerbaijan 1,000 years ago. So, and in another way also, this nexus between transport, trade, and tourism is really very, very important. Because that is, tourism brings people together. And when people come together, it generates a level of comfort. And when that level of comfort, it brings in investments, it brings in transport, it kind of takes it to the, as they say, the economy of scales. And that's what we are really trying to do.
Well, since the start of this year, a certain small White House on the other side of the world has certainly put the cat among the pigeons when it comes to creating, let's say, uncertainty with trade costs through tariffs and so on. What impact do you see the current, perhaps, uncertainty being created by President Trump's tariffs on your member states in trying to find some way forward without having a negative impact overall?
Well, I think we are, I would say, a diverse group of countries, where some countries have pretty large and extensive trade with the Western countries, including the United States, and there are others that do not have as big trade as some of the other countries in the world have. So from that perspective, obviously, the direct impact of the increase in tariffs and the uncertainties and unpredictabilities that it brings along is not. But then again, these steps have certain impact on the global trading system. And as you know, at least 4 of our members have been in the process of WTO accession for many, many years, and that also actually is a factor standing in the way of their full integration, trade integration within the region. So from that, and again, I think weaponization of a trading system or financial system, frankly, is something that is not good for cooperative multilateralism that we all seek to embrace and achieve. So from that perspective, and uncertainties, frankly, in particularly in trade, if I have to dispatch a container and I don't know what the price of that particular item is going to be when it reaches the port of its destination, I would rather keep it at home or use it elsewhere rather than, using or going to that destination. So that's something, and I do hope that this is temporary, and this is transient, and hopefully things would get back to normal.
As I wrap up, I should point out that, we are in, of course, one of the member states here, having a chance to enjoy Turkmenistan. Anything in particular you noted about how the country is moving forward with its program, of inviting the world in and so on?
Oh, for me as Secretary General ECO, Turkmenistan is my second home. I am a regular here, and I must say that I am very impressed by what they do for us within the organization, their willingness to always host important meetings and conferences to contribute substantively to our work. But we also see them, and I will be, inshallah, coming back also for the International Peace Conference that will also be hosted in December. And I was here on a number of other occasions, and each time I come back here, I leave more impressed with their ability to organize these events, with their ability to contribute both logistically and substantively. And we are certainly, to see one of our member states organize an event of this size and scale and a major international conference is, of course, a source of pride for us.
Super. Mr. Secretary General, thank you so much.
It's lovely talking.
Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kazakhstan's the largest of the landlocked countries, covering more than 1 million square miles, while Vatican City, the independent enclave in Rome, is the smallest by both area and population. At the other extreme, the most populous landlocked country is Ethiopia, with more than 100 million people living there. I sat down with Ethiopia's delegate, Member of Parliament, Dr. Fateh Mahdi Wazir, to discuss this. Ethiopia's situation has its own unique issues. You have to deal with climate, you have to deal with borders, as many LLDCs do. What do you see as the priorities for your country?
Yeah, our priority for our country is there are several issues, actually, as you have mentioned. One of the issues is about climate change. And there are a lot of progresses made in regards to tackling or fighting this climate change. Our country is now following green diplomacy, green economy, and we have been planting billions of trees to combat climate change. But now let me come to the point of one of the most priority issue for our country is access to maritime, access to sea. So Ethiopia, as you know, in history, just before 1991, since Eritrea departed after that onward, for the past 3 decades almost, we lost our access to the sea.
Of course.
And this has created a lot of problems, disadvantages for our country. And that we have been feeling a lot, the impacts, the effects of being landlocked. So in the history, Ethiopia, since its existence, it's a very rich country with histories, more than 3,000 years of age. Actually, it is a place where the birth of citizens, the birth of the nations has been found in Afar region, as you know. But after that, since the independence of Eritrea, we lost access to sea.
You also then had to deal with conflict.
Yes, the conflict is now almost stopped. Mm-hmm. It's already in peace. We don't have any issues with borders nowadays.
I mean, in the build up to this point now where things are settled, you did also have that issue of being landlocked, dealing with conflict and of course climate.
Yes. All through these hurdles, but now the most important critical issue is gaining access to seaport, because this access to seaport, why it is important? There are several issues that we can raise. The most important and the critical issue is economic. Because our economy has to change. Our population is increasing. Ethiopia population is expected to increase a lot. In the near future, it is going to be more than 200 million. Now it is 130 million. So this population, the economy, the demand, the progress, as you know, Ethiopia is also one of the leading in economic development. In East Africa, growth has been attained 8-point growth. It has been accepted by IMF and other reporters, also international reporters. They have witnessed this growth. So the economy is growing, changing, the population is increasing. We have to create job employment. We have to create this. So we are paying very extra amount of payment for port services to other neighboring countries. And almost 90% of our commodity, import and export, is coming through only one port, Djibouti port. 90% of Ethiopia's import and export goods. And the facility, the services, the costs, the payments, and even dependence only on a single port is making us vulnerable to so many problems.
Now, the United Nations Secretary General talked about the need for LLDCs to be more united, to be able to help each other, and of course for the world to recognize the stresses, such as Ethiopia, which is the most populous LLDC as well, yes. To be able to be granted access to borders and ports as well. Do you think at a conference like this, there will be that people will listen and realize how important it is for there to be more support for LLDCs?
Yeah, in the conference, there are so many issues and the points raised. His Excellency Antonio Guterres also, he mentioned several important key points. What is important now is, as you have mentioned, unity between the two countries. Also, if you remember, there is United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which gives a right for landlocked countries to access sea through negotiating with bilateral negotiations with neighboring countries, through agreements. This is international law signed by a lot of countries. So what is important now is to bring the laws into practice. And when these landlocked countries, when they get access to the sea, they are not only the one to benefit. It is a benefit for the region. It's a benefit for the neighboring country too. Goods and people, they have the right for free movement, international free movement. What is produced in one region is not produced in another region. What is available in Europe is not available in Africa. What's available in Africa is not in another country. What's available in Ethiopia is not available in Djibouti. What's available in Kenya is not available in Somalia, maybe, if we see the East Africa. So products, goods, services, they have to be freely moved. If you see European Union, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, he also mentioned, European Union, they have, landlocked countries, some of them, but they get access from the neighboring countries with agreement. That didn't create any problem for them. But together they progress and they prosper together.
Now, what you're talking about is that kind of unity where people work together. For your country, for Ethiopia, how much are things complicated by the fact we now have the US with some fairly punishing tariffs on countries around the world? How much does that affect what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, diplomatic negotiations are always important. One thing happening in one corner of a country because of globalization is affecting you, whether tariffs or custom procedures or anything, they have impact for sure. But I don't say the effect is this much because I don't have concrete data. As a legislator and from the parliament, it will have impact, of course, but we need to work together, especially if you are a landlocked and the World Trade Organization system, you are not fully practicing and enjoying equal rights, which is, you can say it is injustice. On top of that, if there are tariffs and other bans, it will fuel the problem for this landlocked country, especially when you are landlocked. When tariff costs are imposed on you, it will be a fuel on what you call it, on a fire. So it will increase the vulnerability. It will have for sure impact on the economy because the movement of goods, trade relations, connections between countries, whether developed and developing, between developing countries, between developed nations, is important. And we need to work on World Trade Organization framework. Ethiopia is trying to enter into this accession to World Trade Organization, and there are successful moves. It is in the last stage now. But to enjoy fully World Trade Organization fruits, you have to have access to the sea.
Sir, thank you so much for your time. Mongolia is another vast country that's landlocked and has no direct access to seaports. But with Russia and China as its neighbors, it does have access to two huge markets. The Mongolian First Deputy Prime Minister received a warm welcome in Awaza at the start of the conference and told me about his country's priorities. I wonder, Minister, at a time when a lot of the world is feeling pressure from countries like the USA because of tariffs and sort of a sense of borders closing and protectionism, how that impacts your country and what role you feel you can have in perhaps realigning or helping to realign world trade strategy. What role Mongolia can play?
За энэ геополитикийн асуудлууд, энэ ойролт орны мөргөлдөөн, энэ Америкийн худалдааны
So in terms of uncertainties around the world and trade wars, it has a direct impact on the global economy. However, Mongolia's economy is dependent on the mining and raw materials industry, and we export 90% of our mineral products, and those go mostly to China. So trade wars have an impact on our neighboring countries and also on our export volume. And that has an effect on the supply and demand dynamics of the steel industry, for example. And indirectly, that decreases the price of our key commodities, the ones that Mongolia exports. So from that perspective, our export revenue is expected to decrease as of this year. It has already decreased 40% year on year. So that just means we have to be very prudent with our budget expenditure, not just in terms of operational expenditure, but also capital expenditure.
Тэр замаар одоо өөрийнхөө бүтээгдэхүүнийг тухайн одоо бүс нутгийн зах зээл рүү гаргах.
And we have to reprioritize what's important and essential, and also budget friendly. So that has been our key policy regarding short-term actions back home and also going forward globally.
Ажиллаж байна. За тэгээ мэдээж ийм үед бол эдгээр эдийн засаг ингээд агшаад.
It is also very important to be mindful of all these changing circumstances. And that is why the call for multilateralism at the United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries is very important. Because these issues and challenges we face are common to all of us in one way or another. And we have to make joint efforts to manage these shared challenges.
Гэдэг бол бидний хувьд одоо маш чухал зүйл болж товарж байна.
Land degradation and desertification is a major concern for Mongolia, along with many landlocked countries. The first Deputy Prime Minister intends to focus on these when Mongolia hosts next year's Global Climate Conference, COP17. The location for this conference about landlocked countries is an intriguing one. Delegates flying in for the event would have been dazzled by the sun reflecting on the Caspian Sea as they approached the coastal resort of Awaza. But the sea itself is landlocked, with no easy access to the opportunities offered by global maritime trade. Well, for many of the landlocked countries, diversifying the economy is vital for future prosperity. While Turkmenistan benefits from vast gas reserves, It's among a number of nations at the LDC3 gathering that are looking to tourism as an economic asset. The resort of Awaza has been developed with overseas visitors in mind. The landlocked country of Botswana is also one seeing tourism as a potential economic benefit that can be grown. The southern African nation is known for its diamond mining, but it's vulnerable to the roller coaster nature of the market, so it needs to diversify its economy, as Botswana's Trade and Entrepreneurship Minister explained to me. Botswana, of course, is in one of those unique positions of being a landlocked developing country, but you have some unique aspects also in your position, sort of very centralized in Africa in terms of being a hub. Tell me first about the diversification of the economy that the country's been going through in order to try to strengthen its position economically.
Well, as you know, we've been too reliant on diamonds, and over the years it has worked for us. But of course, over time, when diamond sales went down, or currently are going down, then you obviously have a problem with just being reliant on one. And therefore, that means that we have to look at other products or minerals that we can source from a country and sell out to the country. And therefore, we've been looking at other things that we can really do. We have not done well in terms of industrializing, and this is an opportunity for us to start looking at things like that. Even the minerals that we have been looking that we have in the country, we have not been turning them into products or adding value to them. So there's also an opportunity to add value to minerals that we have. And also the diamonds, I mean, we have not taken advantage of adding value to them because we have been selling them as from mining and then selling them as just ripe diamonds.
Yes, I understand actually Botswana has restructured its deal with De Beers, the biggest diamond company, in order to be able to have a better position. I understand that's true, yeah?
Yes,
yeah.
We have what we have. And of course, because the diamond sales we're still not sure if we'll get a maximum benefit from, because the diamond sales are low.
What particular areas do you see as being the ones that will start to supplement the diamond industry, or at least maybe even start to take over from it? What areas would you identify?
Well, the advantages is that we've been relying on agriculture for the longest time. We currently are selling one of the best beef in the world. And that's another area that we have not explored, that we need to explore, or maybe also need to put a lot of energy into it. And other products, of course, we have recently started selling citrus to other countries, and it's an opportunity because now that we've seen that it can work, we can even expand it so that we have a larger share also to contribute.
And I understand tourism is an area you can look at too.
Yes. Of course, tourism is there. Failed to mention it because largely the locals don't really benefit too much from it because a lot of players in that space are foreigners. But it's how then the government should look at maybe restructuring policies to make sure that there is maximum benefits for locals.
What impact did COVID have? Because I know many countries, especially the LLDCs, the landlocked developing countries, had to rethink after COVID especially.
Yeah, because of the reliance, mainly for Botswana, it has been we buy most of our food products from outside. And during COVID, we had shortage of a lot of things because, now countries were hoarding onto things that they would actually sell out. I think because out of fear of being productive at the time. So I think COVID also brought some lessons to Botswana to stabilize our food security. And of course, other industries like pharmaceuticals and that we really need to look at.
One thing that turned the world trade system and supply chains upside down has been, of course, the US and its tariffs constantly being threatened by President Trump. What's your take on how Botswana would be impacted by this? I know the tariff amount has come down, but it's a constant flux. It's a lot of uncertainty, isn't it?
Well, what we got is, I mean, we can only accept what we got, but from the initial 37%, we've been given 15%. I mean, it's something. But also we have to be mindful that countries make those decisions on their own, and we have to create buffers that when that happens as a country, what is it that we can do?
That's what I was thinking in terms of tariffs in general, irrespective of what's happening now. They obviously have a major impact on landlocked countries because you're always having to negotiate with those with whom you border.
Yeah, most definitely, because getting goods from our countries to the market is still a hassle. It's costly. Transport costs are high. And it also depended on the policy of the countries that you use in transferring those products. So it's always a challenge. And when the tariffs are high, when you still have other issues to deal with, I mean, it makes it even more difficult for products to move.
Where do you see Botswana 10 years from now?
Well, I see Botswana as one of the shining light of Africa. There is a lot of opportunities. I think when your opening statement, you say the advantages of Botswana, apart from being called a landlocked country, we can call ourselves a land-linked country and use ourselves as a pad also, or as a passage for goods also to SADC and to the northern part of Africa. So if we leverage on those opportunities and creating ourselves as a hub, then we'll definitely benefit and grow to a status where our citizens will be satisfied with what the government is doing.
Minister, I love your analogy, using the glass half full, glass half empty. If the glass half empty is landlocked, then land linked, as you say, is the glass half full.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The European Union delegation had a busy time at the conference. Its representatives offered to continue support from the European continent while encouraging South-South relations between landlocked countries. What is the situation when it comes to the collaboration between the EU and the Central Asian states for which you're responsible?
I mean, starting from early 1990s and gradually from being a little bit paternalistic at the time, we moved towards a genuine partnership where actually those are our partners here within the region, which are defining where and what kind of the very targeted help they might need. And it's interestingly, of course, everybody speaks about the money.
Yeah.
And the money dedicated to our cooperation is enormous. During the Samarkand summit, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, announced the global gateway package of 12 billion euros that the collective Team Europe is actually dedicating to Central Asia.
And in what areas would these be focused? What are the main areas of focus for this collaboration?
Three main areas are connectivity, because this is probably the most urgent area where we need to do more. And I will explain why. Because when we speak about the second important area, which is development of trade, investments in the economy here, including in critical raw materials, which is a topical issue for everybody around the globe now. One thing is, of course, you can build whatever mine or factory you need. But if you cannot get out whatever you are producing, it's meaningless. So connectivity is utmost priority. We are speaking about approximately 3 billion euros dedicated to investments in building connections, which are both infrastructure, transport, but also digital. The second one would be investments in production and trade. It's approximately 2.5 billion, and another approximately 6.5 billion actually in what we call the water, energy, and climate change nexus, because this region is extremely vulnerable in terms of water scarcity. We have still growing population. In countries like Uzbekistan, the population growth is, we have something like another 1 million people actually being born every year, and the arable land is restricted. You cannot get much more of it. Also, industrial consumption of water is increasing. Urban consumption. I mean, every human needs to drink, wash, and do other things. So, but the water here in Central Asia is a sort of a finite resource. And the impact of the climate change, including melting of glaciers, in a long run will create enormous problem here. So we need all the efforts we can actually apply here to address this problem, which means the saving of water resources, looking for alternative technologies, and actually adapting also lifestyles to the new reality.
And of course, you have a large number of landlocked countries in Central Asia.
All 5 of them, and one of them even the double landlocked,
yeah.
Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
So apparently, those are things that are extremely expensive just to get access, both for exporting their goods, but also importing whatever they need. The closest ocean ports are either to the south, where infrastructure is either non-existent, like in Afghanistan, or where might be some political or security concerns for the access to some ports on the coast of the Gulf, which would be the closest ones. And another thing which is extremely important, that there is a growing understanding here within Central Asia that the money is not sufficient for the development of the economy. Frankly speaking, you can borrow money rather easily nowadays. It's again available. I mean, it's easy money. What you need the transfer of technology. But even more than that, you need the transfer of knowledge. Because to operate modern technology without necessary skills makes no sense, and sometimes is counterproductive, or even, can bring a lot of damage. So there is a clear understanding by the leadership in all 5 countries here that they need to invest in their future, not only in terms of brick and mortar or whatever fancy machinery you could imagine. No, to invest in brains. So, and we are there to assist.
As a seasoned diplomat yourself, having held ambassadorial posts and working across the world, are you seeing a shift away from kind of eyes looking west to, well, say less west, into the European Union area, rather than America, North America in general, and also a sense of building identity here that has its own value as opposed to being attached to a Western value?
I would say yes and no at the same time. One thing which makes me extremely happy, because this is also sort of part of my mandate to facilitate closer cooperation within the region, we see more and more that both people in Central Asia, but also leadership of the Central Asian countries, they start to assert themselves as a region and also act as sort of the entity, even without having any formal sort of the framework or organization for that. But they are putting much more effort in coordinating their actions, both within the region, but also towards the rest of the world. We have the Central Asia Europe Summit, Central Asia US presidential meetings, summits with China, with some other major players. So this is something that probably for the first time in their modern history, they feel this necessity to stick together, to work together. And I would say, yes, there is also growing understanding and returning probably to their own cultural sources. I mean, we are speaking about ancient civilization which is existed here and is on a par with whatever the ancient Greece, Rome, even, I mean, probably even Egypt or Mesopotamia. The only problem here is that because most of the buildings were built out of mud bricks, they just disappeared. Sometimes we are lacking this proof, but indeed we are speaking about. So they are retracing their own roots, which is extremely important and very good because countries of the region were under the external domination for centuries. And also another very important thing here when we speak about the Central Asia, they are perfect examples showing that Islam and modernity are fully compatible.
Interesting.
And this is also may serve as a source of inspiration to many other societies, including in our own European countries where we have now considerable Muslim population. So this is something that I would see as very interesting process ongoing. And of course, when we speak about the Central Asia, I mean the ancient Khorasan, it used to be the center of Islamic enlightenment. Abu ibn Sina, Al-Khwarizmi. And when we speak about the Islamic theology, Al-Bukhari, the one who compiled the second most sacred book in Islam. So there are things that Central Asia can bring and must bring back to the world.
Very interesting point. Thank you very much, sir, for
Thank
taking
you.
the time. Thank you, sir. A number of speakers at the UN conference gave messages of support to the Palestinians suffering in Gaza. The Palestinian ambassador to Turkmenistan told me there were parallels between landlocked countries and the situation for Palestinians living in Gaza and the West Bank. One of the things about the LLDC conference is that, of course, it is representing landlocked developing countries largely, but also talking about unity between countries to provide equity. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, talked in his speeches about how there must be better equity and everyone should come together irrespective of the size of the country or the situation. Because the situation for Palestinians is so unique, how much do you think the LLDC gathering, the kind of unity that there is at the conference, can actually make a difference for Palestine?
Really, it can make a difference. Because if you talk about the landlocked countries, you can talk about the differences between West Bank and Gaza. First, West Bank is really locked because there is no river or a sea can make it for any delivery of goods or anything. But for Gaza, we have a sea, but we are not allowed to have any ports or use anything because of the Israelis' restriction on our people in Gaza. So we have two differences, landlocked and unlocked country. So if the people here and the countries join their effort together to push on the Israelis government, even if it's hard now because they are very far a right government and it's not listening to the voice of the world, they will manage to open the borders for the Palestinian people. We can manage to enter the aids that is the trucks of the aids that is holding still on the borders of our neighboring countries. This is the main issue that we need in this time. This is the critical matter that the Palestinians need. We need the aids to come to Gaza without any delay by the efforts of our beloved friends from the countries.
You point out something very interesting, and that is that Palestinian lands are actually in two very different situations. As you indicate, a sea border, but no opportunity to use it. But then also with the West Bank, it's not just landlocked, but it's lots of pockets of landlocked areas, and they're not even many, in most cases, interconnected.
Exactly, because of the settlements that is residing in the West Bank and the expansion of these settlements. The agricultural arable land that the Palestinians use in West Bank, now it's decreasing because of the continuation of the settlements. The Israelis are now trying in the northern West Bank to take all the lands there, and now they are announced that they are going to make annexation for West Bank to Israel, and this is really defy all the international laws.
Now, the LLDC 3 conference, in talking about what landlocked developing countries need, has talked about the need for financing.
Yes.
And dealing with issues that will support those countries, developing countries, to be able to handle issues such as climate change, grow their industries internally through technology and so on, for example, in order to provide economic growth and education. In the case of somewhere like Gaza, you face an incredible challenge because it's not just simply finance to improve the situation, but now it needs finance to rebuild completely. Exactly. Do you see, as a Palestinian, with so much destruction, the prospect of the world coming together to rebuild somewhere like Gaza?
Yes, I see it, because we have a lot of friends and we have the minds in Palestine. We have the genius people in Palestine, and they are residing also in Gaza. If they joined efforts, it will be rebuilt. Not as they say for 30 years, maybe it will take 15 years, but it will be rebuilt by joint effort, by financing, by giving the hope for the Palestinians that this is your land. We are the indigenous people of this land, so we have to live there. So if they joint efforts, as they say, and each country give for the Palestinian, I think it will be rebuilt with no time.
Assuming that rebuilding occurs, that the situation changes to give Palestinian people some self-determination, which sectors do you see as those that will help Palestinian people to start to reintegrate into the world? What areas of development and growth can be focused on?
Well, the main areas of development, I think we Palestinians excel in agriculture, also in technology. We also great in industry. So these the main areas, and in health, we have a lot of expertise in health. So, and we have the manpower and experts to give to the whole world. So it's easy to exchange these expertise with the whole world.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Several of the discussions here in Awaza focused on the rights of women and young people and diversifying the workforce as a way forward for landlocked developing countries. One of the youth representatives from Turkmenistan told me that climate change was a key concern for her generation as part of the United Nations SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. So tell me about the role you've had here at the LLDC3.
Thank you for asking me that question. I'm here to represent Turkmen youth, and I'm here to represent my goal. I'm an SDG ambassador for goal number 13, which is climate action. And here I'm to raise my voice, what youth are doing here in Turkmenistan to make those goals to achieve to the year of 2030.
Tell me how active young people in Turkmenistan are when it comes to things like the SDGs. Are they fully aware?
Yes, I think that in my community, people around me, all of them know about SDGs. We make lots of awareness raising activities, not only in Ashgabat, which is capital city in Turkmenistan. Recently, we went to the Velayats, which are regions of Turkmenistan, and we went there to raise awareness about SDGs and human rights. So we make sessions every year to make SDGs more known. So in the comparison with the year 2020 to this year, 2025, the percentage of people that know more about SDGs raised it to, I think, to 10%.
Amazing. So you've managed to raise the awareness quite a lot in just 5 years.
Yeah.
Let me ask you how receptive people are, because of course you have the cities like Ashgabat, even here, Turkmenbashi, nearby Awaza. How responsive are the people in the more rural areas? How willing are they to learn about the needs to pay attention to the SDGs?
The people in rural areas, in an area that's hard to reach for information, they are really interested in that because they are limited in information, they are limited in the resources, and they want to know more, they want to engage more. And it is very interesting to see how they want to interact not only with local activities, but regional as well. So
they have, because I guess the issues like climate change affect them more.
The issue of climate change became not only the regional or national challenge, it became global for the whole world. So we need to make our voices not only used, we need to make it collectively. Yeah, the whole world needs to make action towards climate action. And I think that here we make a huge step towards making climate action more known.
One thing is that this conference talks particularly about landlocked developing countries, which includes Turkmenistan. How much do you have to focus on the fact, this being the LLDC 3, the third conference of the UN, that it's climate change, but also specifically a focus on the needs of the developing countries that are landlocked?
Yes, that is a good question. That is a great question, We discussed about it yesterday with my peers, and they said, we have the same challenges and we need to survive and we need to meet the challenges, not only with youth, we need to interact with the government. And that is the best part, that here in Turkmenistan, our government supporting our activities, and SDG Ambassadors initiative, it is a joint program of the United Nations in Turkmenistan and our government. In here, we do lots of things as the youth, as the SDG Ambassadors team. We make lots of things with the government.
So you get a lot of support?
Yes, we get a lot of support. That's why we are here.
It's very well done. Thank you very much, and more luck to you in your work as well.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
Thank you very much. Well, while mixing here with such a diverse group attending the LLDC 3 conference, I decided to ask a random series of delegates to rank the following issues relating to landlocked developing countries in order of importance according to them. The topics were borders, referring to the relationship that landlocked developing countries have with their nearest neighbors. Unity, specifically global collaboration between landlocked developing countries. AI, not just artificial intelligence, but essentially closing the technology gap between nations. Climate, simply the impact of climate change. And economy, meaning trade tariffs, the supply chain, and the global economy.
I think unity is the most important.
Okay, so unity between landlocked countries.
Yes, because once you are united with one common goal, one purpose and one vision, everything else falls apart.
Okay.
So the next would be borders. When you are united, which means you no longer have borders.
Okay.
Unity, the most hateful borders are within the mind. So when you are united, you see that you are the same. And artificial intelligence, no matter how scary it is, but I believe it's
more than just that, though. It's also about bridging the technology gap. Should LLDCs be focusing on developing the technology such that AI and other aspects can be a dominant force in those countries?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
because
so number 3
is so efficient, yes,
and
it can assist to develop the infrastructure.
Of course, climate change.
And then the economy.
Economy, okay. Yes. So basically sorting out trade relationships, tariffs and so on.
Yes, and then climate change becomes the last why. Climate change is artificial challenges somehow. Because whenever there are natural disasters or the climate is changing, it affects agriculture, it affects tourism, it affects even health. So when you have enough knowledge within the artificial intelligence or the digital divide, you can actually come up with solutions that can actually bring you to a better scenario. You can find many countries with the deserts. They have beautiful cities. I've been to Dubai. Who would remember it was a desert at some time? So if you have the right technology, even use artificial intelligence, you can come up with solutions and break barriers. That's what I think.
I think the economy.
Economy is the most important. Okay, I'm going to put number one for that. So then, if it was the next thing that they should focus on, which is a priority, which would it be?
I think they unite.
The unity, huh? So yeah, but so that's unity as a bloc. Great. As you said, it's important to the power they have.
Yes.
Which would be the third one?
Let us say borders, I think.
So, okay, borders with neighboring countries,
Yes.
establishing strong relations. And sir, which would you say?
For everyone, of course.
And then four, would it be technology or climate
Of course,
change?
I think that technology.
So technology is four, huh?
Yes.
Okay. And then five would be the dealing with climate change as a priority.
In this case, let's start with economy, because borders, I think more or less, except for certain regions, I think it's more or less, so maybe economy is first.
So trade and something, yeah, okay.
I think AI would help, but I think first climate, actually. Second
okay.
climate.
Second climate, okay.
Because AI affects the climate, so first you need to make sure you mitigate
That's
before you
interesting, yeah,
prevention, preemptive measures.
Understood, yeah.
And AI.
AI would be the technology gap, bridging the technology gap.
Yeah, bridging the technology gap. Yeah, and then fourth, borders.
So that's with the neighbours and so on.
And then unity is more global, right?
Unity is between the LLDCs, whether they as a bloc could be more powerful. Okay, so unity first?
Yeah, unity and economy.
Okay, I'll put number one for unity then.
Yes.
All right, and then number two would be economy.
Regional integration. This
of
is
course.
something really very important.
Right. Do you think that the LLDCs, so you think as unity, do you think the bordering relationships are important? Which would be number three?
Of course, it's part of the unity. You know, as long as you have a regional integration process, which is very efficient. I mean, you know, when you have railway, highways, you know, and of course, you know, the business people, they have, you know, the freedom of movement,
of course,
freedom of goods as well. You know, this is something really very important.
Okay, so I'll put borders number three, which would be AI training the
technology.
Technology, okay.
Technology is key.
So then, where does economy fits in last?
Because you know it's facilitating, you know, the trade, you know, the clearance customs.
Of course. Well, that's also training to bridge
as well.
And then climate would be last then.
We can say it will be the borders.
Borders, so dealing with your immediate neighbours.
Dealing with the immediate neighbours.
Yeah, okay.
And economy.
Economy, okay, good. Was crucial.
The climate, because of the problems that we are experiencing with the climate change,
interesting,
it's becoming very huge.
Yes, in fact, SG, I think of UNSG mentioned that too.
Yeah, sure.
And then?
I believe AI.
AI, okay.
AI, because now this is cutting across all sectors.
Yes.
And
yes.
then unity.
Unity of as a block, yeah.
As a block.
Understood.
Well, I'll go for unity.
Unity, okay. So that's unity between the developing, the landlocked countries.
Yes.
Okay, and if it was number two?
Well, for my number two, I'll go for border and AI, sort of enablers of an economy. So they'll go borders.
Borders,
two,
yeah.
Yeah.
Borders
and
number two, that's the relationship you have with those around you.
Yeah.
And of course, as you say, land linked.
Yes.
So that's wonderful. Number three?
Economy.
Economy?
Yes.
And then number
AI, and then the last one will be climate.
Climate. Interesting. A few people have said climate is the last one.
Yeah.
I guess it's one that affects countries apart from landlocked. There are only two countries in the world that are double landlocked, that is, surrounded by countries that are themselves also landlocked. Liechtenstein, that's sandwiched between Switzerland and Austria, and Uzbekistan, that lies between Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Turkmenistan. In parallel with the conference theme of driving progress through partnerships, Uzbekistan's President Shavkat Mirziyoyev was presented with the Order of Turkmenistan by the host country's national leader, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov. The presentation was made during a gathering of Central Asian heads of state, and it marked his role in developing cooperation between the two nations. Well, the third UN Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries concluded with the adoption of the Awaza Political Declaration and the endorsement of the Awaza Programme of Action, providing a 10-year roadmap to address the challenges facing the world's 32 landlocked nations. It was left to key speakers from the UN and host nation Turkmenistan to sum up the conference's achievements and the challenges ahead.
This conference has been a turning point. It has reaffirmed that geography must not determine destiny. We now have a bold and practical blueprint, the Awaza Political Declaration and the Awaza Programme of Action. They set out a clear vision and path forward. Our task now is clear: to translate this vision into action on the ground.
We have adopted the Awaza Political Declaration, a powerful expression of unity, solidarity, and high-level commitment. This declaration reaffirms our collective dedication to implementing the 2030 Agenda, advancing multilateral cooperation and ensuring that LLDCs are fully integrated into the global economy.
The legacy of this conference will be measured not by words, but by the real progress we make in the lives of the 600 million people in the 32 LLDCs. My earnest hope is that each of us leave Awaza with a practical plan to turn our aspirations into reality. Let us make the promise of land linked not only a phrase, but a new way of life.
Well, as the sun sets on the Caspian Sea, that's all for this episode from the UN's Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries. From me and the team here in Awaza on the coast of Turkmenistan, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments, and I'll see you soon.